Our next speaker for the session is Captain Pradeep Chawla. Captain Chawla is the chairman of GlobalMet and the managing director of QHSE and Training Anglo-Eastern Ship Management Limited. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Kirtan, and sorry for being late. As you know, I was on the other panel for similar discussions. I do have a presentation which I will try to share now. I'm speaking from a hotel room in Brisbane. So let me see if this technology works well from here. Okay, are you able to see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then I guess everything is fine. So thank you very much for considering me worthy for this panel. And it's good to see you, old friends. Dr. Cleopatra, we haven't met in a long time, but we should be traveling again soon. I did come to Europe, but then with the COVID in Germany, etc., can't travel, and I'm stuck here to go back to Hong Kong. So yeah, so without wasting time, let's get on with what I have to say, and then I'll be open for questions. So future of maritime education, is a hybrid model possible or not? Let me try and see if I can get this. Yeah. Okay. So the fact is that since the time that I have joined SEA in 1974, our world has changed. The top row is the kind of ships that I sailed on. Well, the first one on the left is actually before my time. That was just about being scrapped or recycled when I came out to sea in 70s, the midship accommodation derricks kind of ship. And then by the time I left sea, that was the kind of control rooms that we were having. So the world has changed around us. What's more important, I think, is that our workforce is changing. I won't bother you with the definitions about which year to which year is Gen X and millennials, etc., because I assume everybody already knows that. But the fact is that in another 3 years, 75% of the shipping workforce are going to be millennials. Now, why is this important in our discussion today? I think because the qualities of millennials, which have been driven more by the change in the society, the change in technology that is happening around our lives, has affected the way they have grown up. They all love technology. We all know that from our teenage children. We do know that they love their video games and they are audiovisual learners. We do know that they absorb a lot of content from blogs and social media and Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn and Snapchat, and there must be others which I'm not aware of. Um, they are have this quality of not wanting to just obey, like it was the culture in the past that your parents or your teachers were never to be disobeyed. The younger generation rightfully likes to question why about doing something before you tell them on how to do something. And another important part is that the span of attention, and this is from the Static Brain Research Institute, and I don't know the validity of the research except that I picked it up off the internet, but it says that the average human attention span is down to 8.25 seconds. And I think I would like to believe this to happen because lots of parents will tell us that if you need the attention of your teenager child, it's better to text him at the dining table than to try talking to him. So, this is something that we need to keep in mind. And we need to understand that this generation would like to see instant gratification. They are used to their likes, their ha-has, and they interact a lot through this medium. And this is important in understanding the future of maritime education. In terms of gender diversity, we haven't succeeded well in our industry at the moment, and it's 1.2% women only. And there are a whole lot of issues about why women don't want to join sea. There is maybe a bit of discrimination. Families do not encourage girls to go out to sea in most of the crew supplying nations. There may be harassment on board. And it's a fact that at the moment it's a male dominated industry. And little things like the size of the boiler suits or the shoes kind of stuff, it's evident that there is lack of understanding on how to make our ships more friendly for other genders. Uh, I think it is changing. These are just a few snapshots of people, and now we have our first chief officer and our first chief engineer, females, and it is increasing. It's still a tiny bit of our percentage is not even one at the moment, but we are pretty trying pretty hard to get more people, women to come out to sea. It is important because I'll mention about the future of seafaring skills, that why women are more easy, will find it easier to come out to the maritime profession in the future. So the fact is that it is time to redesign how we teach and also what we teach. We all do know that the STCW is up for revision, and hopefully this time it will be a major revision and not minor tweaking of the tables. We do expect, as Global Met and IMU are taking part in this, we do expect that we should be able to bring in a lot of blended learning and a lot of other new things into the hybrid model of teaching into STCW. So, but it is time to do that. But before we get into the thing about what is the right model of teaching, I think it is important for us to accept that the goal is to ensure that we have competent seafarers. The methodology used is only the means to reach the goal. So while some countries will be ahead of the others in terms of adopting new technologies, it is not that you cannot teach without the internet or without e-learning or without gaming apps or augmented reality or virtual reality. The mix will happen in the future, that it will be a combination of a lot of these things. We'll move away purely from classroom training to e-learning is already pretty much prevalent. Uh, the virtual reality, augmented reality, and gaming apps, and these are examples from Anglo-Eastern screens. So I'm not trying to do a plug out here. It's just that this is what we have achieved in using them, and we have the experience now. And but at the same time, the experiential learning and onboard training will continue to remain important for the future. And also, before deciding about what's the future model, I think we need to be able to discuss the competencies for the future. And I picked up a few because this can be a topic for a whole day conference just on this topic. So one of the main things that they would need to do is to be able to manage change, because in the next 2 years, more will change than what changed in the last 20 years in terms of how ships are run. We are looking at alternative fuels coming in pretty quickly: LNG fuel ships, LPG fuel ships, methanol fuel ships, hydrogen, and maybe even nuclear in the future. We are looking at navigation changing completely with softwares like the Wärtsilä FOSS, which we use, whereby a lot of the information is bundled together and comes up, and things like passage planning, which used to take a second office at 12 hours, now takes 60 minutes to do that. So the seafarers will need to be able to manage the change, and that's a competency that they will all require. They will be needing to be able to focus on critical issues, because if anyone sees the alarm screen of when something goes wrong on a ship today, that screen just kind of keeps running with red and green lines, and finding out the faults is now more of understanding the data on board, rather than touching and feeling machinery or listening for abnormal noises from the machinery. If you have to listen to abnormal noises, now it would be through a stethoscope, probably, and through vibration analysis of machines, rather than actually going and touching and feeling the machinery. And there is something called alarm fatigue that is already occurring, that The tendency then would be to repose alarms rather than take care of them. So that competency to be able to recognize what is critical alarm, what is a general alarm, how to be able to handle is an important one. Ability to work with remote teams is going to be important because a lot of decision making is going to be jointly with the VTS in case of navigation, or with the company remote support 24-hour station that many companies like us now already have. And those kind of decisions with all the machinery data coming ashore on a dashboard of the vessel manager will need to bring in joint decision making with the ship staff. So the ship staff is not left on their own now. There will be a lot of discussions with the shore office. Ability to learn continuously, I mentioned that. Ability to cope with increased stress. Yes, the world is changing fast, and fast change brings about more stress. And two of the human performance skills, ability to communicate effectively and ability to be a leader, because more and more technology will take care of the machinery, but to be able to manage things is going to become more important. And communication, which is the fundamental, uh, I think, foundation of all human mankind interaction, will need to be even more important in the future. Recognizing limitations and dangers of automation, because when you have someone sitting in front of a machinery that is working perfectly, and just once in, the meantime between failures is reducing, engine overalls are changed from 16,000 hours to 32,000 hours now. And for people to be able to suddenly, you know get out of that automation and take emergency actions is something that we will need to train people for. They will need to be able to process very large amounts of data, like I mentioned on the screen, and the ability to just take the data and recognize the patterns and convert it into intelligence and to be able to make decisions out of it is what the future seafarer and the future vessel manager will need to learn very soon. Coming back to the importance of, how do we achieve competency? We all are familiar with the three pillars of making people competent: is the knowledge, the skill, and most importantly, the attitude towards work. So I think what is going to happen in the future is that the knowledge learning platforms are going to change. We will move away from classroom and we will have things like virtual reality. This is something from my company. So we could not take the young seafarers anymore to visit ships, especially in the last 2 years with COVID, etc., and with the changing security regulations. So we converted walking into the four-peak tank into virtual reality program, and now they get familiar pretty much in a different environment. But before they go out to sea, they have been through, walked through tanks, done starting, stopping of machinery in virtual reality. They have learned welding with an augmented reality simulator, which is able to measure how well the person is welding. And there is a whole lot of stuff that is happening in this world with respect to this change in the way we are teaching people. Gaming, I think this particular thing has been underutilized in shipping. This is one of the programs that we have on how to identify defects and make it's almost like making each of our seafarers at the same level of a PSC inspector, and all through the medium of gaming. And the young people will know what I'm talking about when we say swipe right and swipe left. And that's now been brought into the world of teaching, because we have the young people's habits of deciding things by swiping right or left into a game, and they're learning their trade craft through something similar. And what is also going to happen a lot more is micro learning, short videos rather than 40-minute videos, because the span of attention, as I'd mentioned earlier, is reducing. And hence, we need to adapt the way we teach people by bringing down the learning also into smaller bite-sized learning, rather than having long lectures and 45-minute classroom periods. The skill learning platforms, the simulators have been around for 25 years, but the cost of them is reducing by the day, and the quality of the simulations is increasing day by day. The graphics are better. Being able to simulate faults is becoming better. And so I believe that this medium will continue to grow in the hybrid model of the future. But now, the important part with respect to hands-on training. Yes, these are pictures again from our college in Mumbai. We have a full-scale model of a tanker with 4 tanks and all the pumps and all the fittings of a tanker to try and replicate what they would learn on a ship, because the time available on the ship is reducing, especially on ships like chemical tankers, where the turnaround time is very small, voyages are small. So we recreate the ship's equipment, sometimes to scale, sometimes to a miniaturized scale, uh, and we try to recreate these skill learning platforms ashore so that people are better prepared. And this needs to stay. Now, whether we have more sea time on board for learning this on board, or whether we bring this into colleges, in India, there is something called a ship in campus concept, which was started earlier successfully, but maybe not long term successfully because it is capital intensive to keep changing to the modern equipment that ships will have, things like these Framo pumps, etc. But this is an important part. And then the live models, I mean, some real equipment ashore and some replicas of the control systems that are there. So the engine control room from not a very modern ship, but maybe 10 years ago is what you see in the center. And what you see on the left hand side upper corner is a ME engine simulator, which is from the from ME and company. And it's exactly the same kind of screens that they would have on the ship. So bringing these live models ashore will be an important part in the future. Coming to the third pillar, assessing attitude, I think this is where the real challenge is. And I think the future assessments will need to move away from paper exams and get more and more of assessments which are done in near live conditions. So in our case, we use competency checks are done by actually operating the equipment that we have in the college. And this brings a directly transferable skill from the college to the ship, because they have worked on similar equipment either in virtual reality or on live models before they go on the ship. This is importance of the behavioral competencies has been recognized in the industry, and this is from the Intertanko, together with OCIMF, has published a book on behavioral competencies, where there are 6 domains that we have focused on: team working, communicating, situational awareness, decision making, result focus, and leadership skills. This is also part of the 1.30 IMO model course, which together with Global Met, we have revised for IMO. And this is something that the tanker industry is certainly focusing a lot on improving, and it is coming into across the industry, the importance of human performance skills. One critical part in the future competencies and future learning and future education, I think, is mentoring, because the time available on board is becoming lesser and lesser, and hence the ability for the master and chief engineer to mentor the young fellows is going to be lesser. So what we have found as a solution is an online thing that works on the seafarer's personal mobile phone, and hence they are able to choose mentors for different subjects from within the company, and they are able to interact with mentors ashore, which then, or that could be captains with whom they have sailed before and they can be in touch with. So a mentoring platform in the electronic age. Now, a quick comparison between the old ways of doing things and the modern hybrid model. There is no doubt that the hybrid model of or e-learning or online learning or um, does have certain benefits. It can be recorded, archived, played back. It can be updated more easily. It saves a lot of money, and that's one of the attractions to the level of all companies are looking at it so that they don't spend time and airfares and hotel accommodation. So hence it's a good thing to share with that. You can allow a lot more people in the same forum. And when it's like a little bit of just knowledge sharing, for example, there's an incident in the fleet and you want every seafarer within the fleet to know it. It's a great medium because we've run things with 500-600 people on at the same time in a webinar run by the company, and which we could never have done without the use of modern tools like WebEx, Zoom, etc. And it allows students to study at any time, at any place. However, there is a lot of things which were better in the old style of teaching, which should not be thrown away. Uh, the transformational power of teachers. I think all of us will remember some teacher in school or in university or out at sea, people who inspired us to do better in life. And I'll go a bit faster if I'm running out of time, Kirtan. Um,
Yes, sir.
yeah, so transformational power of teachers goes missing when we go everything online. There is an element of social bonding that takes place when you bring students from different fleets onto into a classroom within the company training center, or even between different companies in a normal commercial training center. When they interact with people from other companies, there is a bit of peer-to-peer learning and social bonding that takes place, which is difficult to replicate in the online stuff as yet. I know that there are ways of doing it, and there is no personalization because in a classroom quite often the teacher understands that a learning style of a particular student is different, and he's able to adapt immediately, which is not possible in the online stuff. It Online learning requires a lot of self-discipline because I could switch off my camera and go for a coffee while the teacher is kind of going on. So that's something that has been recognized in the 2 years of COVID that we've been doing online training. And there is a lack of input and flexibility from the trainers. So I believe the hybrid model, yes, there is no doubt that technology will be used, gaming apps, augmented reality, virtual reality, everything will increase. But we all need to be careful about it that we do not give up because the new model of online training is cheaper without the airfares, etc., but that we do not completely throw away. And I would say that the choice of how we teach should be based on the desired learning outcome, and certain things require more peer-to-peer learning, certain things require more interaction, and the teacher is only acting as a facilitator. And for those things we still need to keep our brick and mortar classrooms alive, maybe lesser number of them, maybe less often, but we cannot completely move away to online world. So a hybrid model, yes, with all the caveats that we mentioned. That's all that I have to say in my presentation.